The gun to your hand and pull the trigger.
Milo Yiannopoulos, disgraced provocateur of the alt-light, narcissist, general cunt rag. The only good thing, as far as I can see, that he ever did was being one of the very few people to report accurately and honestly about Gamergate, and even then it was really all about him and something he used as a springboard for his own profile. So while he was useful, that was about it. And that's the full extent of the kudos that Milo gets from me. You may remember that Milo had a book deal before his fall from grace, where his book Dangerous, which was eventually published via other means, was supposed to be published by Simon and Schuster. And when they pulled out of the whole thing following his fall from grace due to some unguarded comments about his own childhood abuse, something I regarded as a bit unfair and double standards at the time, but that's by the by. Anyway, it put paid to several aspects of his career, including this book that he was supposed to be writing. And afterwards, Milo decided to take them to court over it. And this has been in process. As we all know, the courts take a long time to get anywhere and deal with anything. But today there were some revelations. I wasn't going to make a video about it, but I made a few observations, and people's reactions to those observations were rather interesting. Let's be charitable and say interesting. Now, I'm at a disadvantage here when it comes to publishing and writing because I know how the sausage is made. I have a near 20-year career in writing and publishing and a bit of editing here and there, so I know how this works and I know how it goes on. So an early draft of his book with editor's notes was leaked, and people have been making hay out of some of the editor's comments and finding them amusing because they seem to be attacking Milo and his writing. I think this betrays certain things about the whole process that people don't understand, issues around editing that people don't understand, and perhaps demonstrates some deeper issues in what was going on between Milo and Simon and Schuster. So here's my informed perspective on this, and why perhaps people shouldn't be crowing, and why perhaps we should all be a bit concerned about some of the people who are crowing, especially people who profess to be editors themselves. Now, you can have many different relationships with editors. Really good editors you have a synergy with. You both believe in the project, they understand your style, they understand what you're saying, why you're saying it the way you are, and so on. And they basically really just clean up and clarify what you're saying, put a bit of polish on it, and make it the best version of you that you are. I've been fortunate to have that relationship with a couple of editors, but it is incredibly rare to be in that position. A good relationship with an editor is somewhat similar, but perhaps a little bit more fraught. They're really little more than just a copy editor, which means they just go through and they check for grammatical issues, perhaps a bit of clarity, and so on. That is really the primary role of an editor. That is really all they should be doing, is to try and make you the best presented, most grammatically correct version of who you are. Where problems start to creep in is when you get an editor who has their own vision for what you're saying, where they would perhaps rather be writing a book. Perhaps they're a frustrated author themselves, or perhaps they can't set aside their own personal feelings or perspective when it comes to editing other people's work. And this seems to be what happened at Simon and Schuster. If you read through the document and the comments, it becomes rapidly apparent that they don't seem to understand Milo, his appeal. I'm not saying I agree with him or that you have to agree with him, but there's no denying that he has a certain kind of appeal. His style, or any of these other things about him. It was clear that the editor that was put in charge was a shit editor. They were trying to bury and dismantle and get rid of Milo's style. Which rather begs the question, why would you pay Milo in advance for a book if you're going to take all the Milo out of the book? I mean, that's the selling point of the book. That's the point of the book, is to present Milo, not the editor, not anyone else. But if you look through, you constantly see this editor trying to cut material, remove jokes, take the Milo out of the book by Milo and about Milo. You know, even the narcissism and so on that is his trademark. The thing that people love and the thing that people love to hate about him. It's just obvious when you look at it that there are massive problems with this editor. Desperately unprofessional of them. And they're doing things counter to what the job of an editor is. Now, you may have some other people who need to look over documents for things like libel and slander and so on, because you want to protect the publisher from any suits or anything else. So there's other reasons for people to look into these documents, to examine them, to maybe suggest removing some things or whatever. But this isn't what we have here. We have here an editor massively overstepping their bounds, replacing the author's voice with their own, trying to change the author's arguments and presentation and characterization and style, trying to remove the author from the book. I've been in the misfortune of being in that position at the very start of my career as well, and I think it harmed the book, even though it launched my career. That is the hallmark of a bad editor, and yet a lot of the people arguing and commenting about this book, about these revelations, about this document, these notes and so on, claim to be editors. And that worries me, because editors should not be activists. They should not be trying to erase or remove or alter the voice or the content, really, of what the author is trying to say. That is overstepping their bounds. It is not their job. Again, I'm speaking in generalities. If you're an editor on a newspaper or something, you may have to edit to make sure that stories and so on fit the overall voice and ethos of the paper, but that's not what we're talking about here. What they were there to get, what they were there to sell, was Milo. Not the editor, not the editor's voice, not the editor's ideas, not the editor's opinions. The editor's view on what Milo said and how he said it, other than to clean up the language and grammar, was completely irrelevant. And yet we have lots of people claiming to be editors, reveling in this, saying this is a good thing. And that's worrying, really worrying. How many authors are being effectively silenced or subverted or even replaced by arrogant editors who are stepping way beyond their bounds? Are there activist editors at all kinds of publishers? These are all great arguments for more self-publishing. This isn't to say that we don't need editors, because we're all blind to the kinds of mistakes, repetitive phrasing and so on that we all use. So an additional pair of eyes is good. But they should just be polishing, tidying up what you've created, not inserting their own voice. That is the hallmark of a bad, terrible editor. If someone worked for me on a manuscript, whether mine or someone else's, and did what Milo's editor did, I would fire them. If I hired an editor to go over my manuscript for one of my publications, and they did what Milo's editor had done, I, A, wouldn't, and B, would never ever work with them again, and C, I would leave them a massively negative review, and I would warn people never ever to work with them. Because they're not an editor. They're a frustrated author who apparently wanted to write their own book. And that is not what you're supposed to do. I'm shocked. I'm appalled. Especially people excusing and praising what was done here. I don't agree with Milo. You don't have to agree with Milo to see that he got a shit deal here. A bad editor. A terrible editor. An editor that should not have a job. At least not in editing. Yeah, even assholes have rights. Even shit people deserve to be treated fairly. There's this thing called principle.